everyone, so I thought this video would be really fun to film. I've seen a few YouTubers do it, and it's basically if I had to declutter one palette from each brand, which palette would it be? So I went through my collection and kind of grouped together by brand. I picked out all of my palettes that I had 2 or more from one brand. So I'm just going to be going through brand by brand and telling you which palette I would choose to declutter if I had to declutter one. And I do love all of these palettes, and actually I'm currently kind of in the middle of doing a decluttering series, but I'm always kind of decluttering my collection and giving away things that I'm not really loving anymore and that I don't get enough use out of. So I probably will end up decluttering some of these in the future, eventually when I go to declutter my eyeshadow palette collection. But for now, I do really love all of these palettes, so let's just go ahead and get into it. So the first palettes I have are from Juvia's Place, and I only have 2 from them. I have the Nubian, which is a really pretty, more neutral palette, and then I also have the Nubian 3 Coral, which has more coral and gray tones. So I feel like this one is a lot more unique. So although I do love my neutral tones and I do really want to keep this neutral palette, I feel like I would end up decluttering this one if I had to, just the Nubian. So I would end up decluttering this just because I feel like this one is a lot more unique, I think. But in my heart, I really would want to keep this one, I think, because it's neutrals, and that's what I tend to go for on an everyday basis. But I don't know, this is a hard one. And I also love Juvia's Place shadows. The next brand is Violet Voss, and I have the Laura Lee palette, which I'm pretty sure is discontinued now. This came out like a very long time ago, but I do really love this palette. And then I also have the Holy Grail palette, which is a more recent-ish purchase. And this is just a bunch of neutrals, and I really like that this has like cool tones on this side and then more warm tones on this side, so you can get pretty much any neutral look out of this. So I do really love this palette as well. And then I also have the Essentials palette, which came in a BoxyCharm, so like really I wasn't like looking at this palette and wanting to buy it because I just got it in a BoxyCharm. But I don't know, I like that this palette is smaller, but I feel like this is the one I would end up decluttering just because the other 2 I bought myself and I was really interested in them. So this one is just not, it doesn't hold like a special place in my heart because it just came in a BoxyCharm, even though these colors are really pretty and I do really love the look of this palette. But yeah, this is the one I definitely would end up decluttering if I had to. So I just had to run back upstairs because I forgot a palette, but the next brand is BH Cosmetics. So I have their Nouveau Neutrals palette, which has a bunch of beautiful eyeshadows and then also some blushes down here at the bottom. And this is a really pretty, more summery peachy tone palette, and I do really love this. And then I also have the Carly Bible palette. This is like the original one. I know they came out with another one, and this definitely isn't available anymore. This came out a really long time ago, but this has some really pretty like soft romantic shades. I feel like this would be like a really good bridal palette, and I also really love these highlighters down the bottom as well. And then the last palette I have from BH Cosmetics is the Shan XO palette, and Shan XO is like one of the first YouTubers I started following, and I've been following her for years now. So I bought this palette to support her, but also because I really love the way this looks. It's just a really pretty neutral palette. And also on the other side, it has lip colors. So I do really love this palette, but I feel like out of these 3, this is the one I use the least. And it's also probably the oldest. Even though I do love these shadows, I think this is the one I would end up decluttering. Next is Natasha Denona, and I don't have much from Natasha Denona, obviously, because they're so expensive, but I do have the Sunrise palette, which is such a beautiful palette, and I also have the Mini Sunset palette. So this is obviously just like a more neutral 5-pan palette, so obviously I would get rid of this just because these are only $25, and obviously this is only 5 shades. And I I got this on a discount, but I still paid a lot more for it, and I just think obviously this has more variety and this is a beautiful palette. So I would definitely declutter the Mini Sunset. The next brand is Urban Decay. So I have Naked 3, which this is one of the more new palettes in my collection. I got this, I think, for Christmas, but it was on like a 50% off sale, and this was the Naked palette that really appealed to me the most out of like their original Naked line. So just because these are more cool tones, and I think this really makes my blue eyes pop. And I do think this is not versatile at all. Like pretty much every look I do with this comes out the same, but this kind of holds a place in my heart just because I got it for Christmas, and I do really like this still. And then I also have the Born to Run palette from Urban Decay, and a lot of people really love this, and honestly, I don't think this is really worth the hype. Just something about it, I don't know what it is, it just doesn't like stick out to me, and I haven't gotten as much use out of this as I probably should have. But I don't know, something about this palette just doesn't really intrigue me too much for some reason. And then I also have the Urban Decay Vice 4. This is like one of the first high-end palettes I got. And as you can see, this color story I feel like is kind of weird to me. So I did use this a lot when I first got it, and I kind of would like to play with some of these colors again because I haven't used this in a really long time. But if I had to choose one to declutter, it would definitely be this one, just because it's the oldest and the color story is just kind of weird to me. So yeah, if I had to, I would declutter this, and hint hint, I'm probably gonna end up decluttering it soon. Now I have some Dose of Colors palette. So the first one is the Desi and Katie Friendcation palette. Obviously everyone knows what this looks like, I think, but it's a really pretty, more neutral palette, but it also has these pops of colors, and I really love this formula as well. And like this shimmer shade is like one of my favorite shimmers ever. And I also have some of their like 5-pan matte shadows, and they recently came out with more of these that have glitter shades in them that I'm really interested in and really want to buy. But I have the Marvelous Mauves palette, which is obviously more purpley tones, and this is brand new. I got it off of Poshmark more recently, but I've never dipped into this even once. And then the other one I have is the Baked Browns one. So obviously this is just more neutral brown tones, and I have used this quite a bit. My favorite shade is this one right here in the middle. I just use that pretty much as an all over lid shade for a like one eyeshadow look. So I do really love this palette. It has all the like neutral browns you need. So I feel like I would end up keeping this, and I would end up decluttering the Marvelous Mauves palette. Now for the brands that I somehow ended up with a ton of palettes from. The first one is Anastasia Beverly Hills. This is the Jackie Aina palette, and I have raved about this. This was one of my palettes of the month, so I do have a tutorial on this, and I really love this palette. It's super versatile, and you can get pretty much any look out of this, so this is one of my favorite ABH palettes. Next, I have the Norvina palette, which is more of a purpley tone palette, and I also really love this. This is still neutral, but it's has some pops of color, obviously some more pinky and purple tones in it. And then of course I have the Soft Glam palette, which is literally a soft glam palette and has all the neutrals you need really. The last one I have is the Sultry palette, and this is my most recent ABH palette, but was there a brush in this before? Because I did get this off of Poshmark, so it wasn't brand new when I got it. I might have used this like once, but I don't think I have used this at all, which is really sad, and I really need to get more use out of this. But if you couldn't tell already, this is probably the palette I would declutter, just because, I don't know, it is the one. I feel like some of these metallic shades are super pretty though, but I just haven't used it enough to know how much I really like it. So just because I use this one the least, I feel like this is the one I would end up decluttering. Now I have a bunch of palettes from ColourPop. So my most recent one, I'm pretty sure, is the Lilac You a Lot, and I love purple tones. Purple is my favorite color, so I thought I had the It's My Pleasure palette, but I don't know, I guess I don't. So I do really love this palette. Obviously, it's a monochromatic palette, so a lot of the looks you do with this are going to come out pretty similar. And then I also have the ColourPop and Bitty collaboration palette, which I don't think is available anymore, but I surprisingly really love this palette, and it does have the pressed glitters in here. So some people don't like the glitters, but I really love glitter, so I do enjoy the ColourPop pressed glitters. I'm just really careful with them not to get them in my eye because they're technically not eye safe, but I do really enjoy this palette. And then I also have the Give It To Me Straight palette, which is more of a cool tone purpley palette, and this is more like neutral really, but it does have some of those purple tones as well. So I haven't used this much, but I do really like my purple tones. The Element of Surprise palette did come in a BoxyCharm a long time ago, and I surprisingly really love this palette. If you cover up this neon pink shade, it's a really pretty, more neutral palette. So I surprisingly really love this palette, and it's sadly discontinued, but it kind of makes sense that it's called the Element of Surprise because I didn't think I was gonna like this, but I do really enjoy it. And then of course I have the Dream Street palette, which is the collaboration with Kathleen Lights that was recently discontinued, but I also haven't gotten enough use out of this. And I bought this to support Kathleen pretty much because, well, it's a really pretty neutral palette, but like some of these blue shades I probably would never really use unless I use that deep blue as like an eyeliner. But I think this is a really pretty neutral palette, and I need to get a lot more use out of it. And then I have the Sweet Talk palette, which is a more peachy, summery palette, and I really love this one as well. So the last palette I saved for last is the Soul palette, and honestly I have no idea why I bought this. This was when I used to go crazy on the ColourPop website and literally buy everything from them before they started coming out with new releases every week. So as you can see, this is a really warm tone palette, and I've probably used this like once, if that, so that's kind of sad, and I've had this for like years, so I definitely would end up decluttering this if I had to declutter any of them. So yeah, I shouldn't have even bought this palette in the first place. And then the brand I saved for last, and no, this is not a best for last situation, more like a worst for last. So this is Morphe, and I really don't support Morphe, and I never really did, but I don't know how I ended up with so many palettes from them. So the first one is the Jaclyn Hill palette. This is the original one, and I bought this mostly to support Jaclyn Hill, and also I love this palette. There's a really good variety of neutrals in here and also some pops of color, as you can see. But yeah, I'm glad I bought this palette. Actually, I think I got this for Christmas, but it was on my wish list, so I'm glad I have this palette. And even though I don't support Morphe, I do support Jaclyn Hill, so I also bought the whole Vault collection. So I'm not going to open all these just because there's 4 of them. I'm sure you know pretty much what they all look like. But yeah, I do have these, and I'm glad I have these to support Jaclyn Hill, not necessarily Morphe. And then I also have the iconic 35O, which is the palette everyone was drooling over back in the day. So this is what it looks like, and for some reason I bought the 35, like the matte version of this, so basically all these shades in a matte version, and also the shimmer version of this, so literally all the same exact shades in all shimmers. So I did end up decluttering those, obviously, because I basically had 3 of the same palette, so I don't think I realized that when I bought it. I think that was just me being dumb. So yeah, I think I've used this maybe once, but it is a really pretty neutral palette. And then I somehow ended up with the James Charles palette, so I'm sure you all know what this looks like, but I kept telling myself, right when this came out even, that I was not going to buy it. Why would I need a whole rainbow palette when I literally barely ever wear color? So yeah, I don't know how this ended up in my hands, but yeah, let's just say I have more self-control now. So I do have this palette, and I'm not proud of it. I do not support James Charles, let alone Morphe, so I don't know how this happened. The last palette I have from Morphe is their 39S, which is their Such a Gem palette, and obviously these are all purple tones, so this did really intrigue me. As I said, purple is my favorite color, so I was really, this really caught my eye, and I guess I just had to have it. But I did do a Shadow Saturday series with this, and really these shadows are pretty much terrible. The metallic shades are like not even metallic. I don't know if they're supposed to be like lid toppers or what. And the matte shades are, I mean, I guess they're okay. I don't know. They're not my favorite. They're pretty hard to work with. So if I had to declutter a palette, it probably would be this palette. And honestly, I'd probably also declutter the James Charles palette because I don't need these, and they're freaking huge. So they're just so annoying to store and to use and to have anywhere, really, because they're so big. They're literally the biggest palettes I have. So honestly, I would declutter both of these, and probably the 35O as well, just because I literally never use these palettes. And the Jaclyn Hill palettes I'll keep just for the Jaclyn Hill part, but not necessarily for the Morphe part. Yeah, so I hope this didn't come off like bad, but those are just my opinions and my thoughts. Obviously you have your own opinions, you can think whatever you want. So yeah, those are hypothetically the palettes I would end up decluttering if I guess I had to get rid of some of my palettes. So I really hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, please give it a thumbs up. And I do post new videos every Tuesday, Thursday, and Saturday. So if you want to see more from me, make sure to subscribe, and don't forget to hit that bell icon to get notified every time I post. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you next time.